There are moments in life that arrive quietly, without warning, and yet somehow manage to rearrange everything that comes after. For Ben Shephard, one such moment came on an ordinary day that began like any other. Busy schedules, familiar routines, and the comforting predictability of family life. But by the time the day ended, nothing felt quite the same. Ben has always been known as the steady presence on screen. Calm, quick-witted, and endlessly likable, he's the kind of person who makes difficult things seem manageable. But behind the polished smile and easy confidence is a man deeply rooted in family, routine, and love. And that is precisely why Annie's unexpected announcement landed with such powerful force. It wasn't dramatic. There were no flashing lights or grand gestures. In fact, it happened in a moment so simple that it almost felt unreal. Annie spoke casually at first, as though she were sharing just another thought, another passing idea. Ben listened, half smiling, unaware that the words about to follow would gently pull the ground from beneath his feet. At first, there was silence. Not the uncomfortable kind, but the kind where the mind rushes ahead faster than the heart can follow. Ben later admitted that in those few seconds, his thoughts raced through years of memories, shared laughter, long conversations, inside jokes no one else would understand, and the countless small moments that had quietly built their life together. Then came the realization. This wasn't just news. It wasn't just a change in plans. It was a turning point. Annie, always thoughtful and quietly strong, watched Ben closely as he processed what she had said. She knew him well enough to recognize the flicker of surprise, the pause before the response, and the way his expression shifted from confusion to understanding. And then, almost inevitably, came the smile. Because that's the thing about Ben. Even when life throws him a curveball, he meets it with warmth, humor, and an open heart. He later joked that his first reaction was to check whether he'd heard correctly. "Say that again," he laughed, pretending he needed confirmation. Humor has always been his way of easing into big emotions, and Annie knew it. She laughed too, breaking the tension, turning a life-altering conversation into something tender and human. But once the laughter faded, the weight of the moment settled in. This announcement meant change. It meant adjustments, conversations, and moments of uncertainty. It meant stepping into something new without a clear map. Yet somehow, instead of fear, there was excitement. Instead of resistance, there was curiosity. And instead of doubt, there was trust. Ben spoke later about how that moment reminded him why he fell in love with Annie in the first place. Her honesty, her courage, her ability to speak her truth with grace and calm. She didn't demand a reaction or push for reassurance. She simply shared what was in her heart and allowed space for it to land. What followed wasn't a dramatic speech or a sweeping declaration. It was something far more meaningful. A conversation. They talked about possibilities, about worries, about hopes that hadn't yet been spoken out loud. There were moments of seriousness, moments of laughter, and even moments where neither of them knew exactly what to say. But through it all, there was an unspoken understanding that whatever came next, they would face it together. Friends close to the couple later noticed a shift, not a distance, but a deepening. Ben seemed lighter somehow, more reflective. Annie carried a quiet glow, the kind that comes from being heard and supported. Together, they moved forward with a renewed sense of partnership, as though that single conversation had quietly strengthened everything that already existed between them. What makes this story resonate with so many people isn't the announcement itself, but the way it was received. In a world obsessed with dramatic reactions and instant conclusions, Ben and Annie offered something different. They showed that real change doesn't always arrive with chaos. Sometimes it arrives with a pause, a smile, and a willingness to listen. Ben later described that day as a reminder that love isn't about having all the answers. It's about being present when the questions appear. It's about choosing patience over panic and understanding over assumption. And above all, it's about remembering that the most important moments in life are often shared quietly between two people who trust each other completely. There was humor too, of course. Ben couldn't resist teasing Annie afterward, joking that she'd chosen the one moment he least expected to drop such meaningful news. Annie, unfazed, simply smiled and reminded him that life rarely waits for perfect timing. That exchange became a favorite story among friends, a reminder that even big moments can be softened by laughter. As time passed, the meaning of that day continued to unfold. Decisions were made, paths adjusted, new routines formed, but the core of it all remained the same, a partnership built on respect, warmth, and shared joy. For Ben, the experience became a quiet lesson in letting go of control and embracing trust. For Annie, it was proof that vulnerability can be met with kindness. And for those watching from afar, it was a refreshing reminder that love doesn't need spectacle to be powerful. Sometimes, everything changes not because something ends, but because something begins. And in that ordinary moment, marked by honesty, laughter, and a shared breath, Ben Shephard discovered that the most life-changing news doesn't have to shake the world. Sometimes, it simply opens the door to a deeper one. If this story resonated with you, take a moment to reflect on the quiet conversations in your own life, the ones that shape everything that follows, even when no one else is watching.